Hello and welcome to another episode of Pigskin Talk. I'm your host, Collin Zink, with the man, the myth, the legend, Casey Cox, and it was comeback galore in the NFL, and it is the season of giving, as there were several comebacks this past week, not just in the NFL, but in the World Cup final, where France came down, where France came back from being down 2-0 to Argentina, but France ended up losing. But anyways, this is football, so let's talk about that. First, first I want to highlight is the Vikings versus the Colts. Now, this was the biggest comeback in NFL history, as the Vikings came back from being down 33 to nothing to the Colts. Um, I mean, the game ended with the Vikings winning 39-36, but I want to know what Kevin O'Connell said at halftime to his team, because that was a heck of a comeback. The most biggest comeback before that I could think of was when Brady was down to the Falcons in Super Bowl 51, and Matt Ryan was the quarterback. Um, so yeah, Kirk Cousins went 34 for 54 for 460 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Dalvin Cook had the day in rushing with 17 carries, 95 yards, 0 touchdowns. And Osborne led the day in receiving for the Vikings for 157 yards and 1 touchdown. Um, like I said, Jeff Saturday couldn't get it done on Saturday, Casey. And
Well, Jeff Saturday hasn't been able to get it done on Sunday either. So
no, no, he hasn't. And there's a reason why he's an interim coach, because they fired their other one, and so I mean I can imagine he's not going to be there for the other next season anyways. Um, Matt Ryan went 19 for 33, 182 yards and 1 touchdown. Moss 24 carries for 81 yards. Pittman 10 receptions for 60 yards. So um, Matt Ryan is still having haunting dreams about being uh, taken down in the second half, especially after Super Bowl 51. Vikings had 518 total yards. Colts had 341. So, um, and the Vikings won the NFC North because of that win. So Packers ain't gonna win it. The Lions' hopes are done for the NFC North, but however, their hopes for the playoffs are still up and running. Um, Speaking of the playoffs, the Bills and Chiefs are still fighting it out for the number one seed, as both are 11-3. The Bills currently have the one seed, and they're on a 5-game win streak, whereas the Chiefs are on a two-game win streak. Over at the NFC, the game that I'm really excited for is the Eagles versus Cowboys on Christmas Eve. uh, Merry Christmas, Jeff. Merry Christmas, Jeff. Yeah, Casey, what can you expect from the Eagles and Cowboys?
man, I think now that game is going to be an exciting game. That game potentially now is for that division. Um, the Cowboys have a tall task ahead though, because this is a game that they know if they want the tiebreaker, they have to win this game by at least 10 points.
Yeah,
And to be able to beat the Eagles by 10 points is going to be a tough task. The only thing the Cowboys have going for them is the fact that the Eagles will likely not have Jalen Hurts playing that game. It'll be a backup quarterback who hasn't seen much playing time. So he may be a little rusty. He may not be game speed ready because he hasn't had any game speed experience necessarily.
mm-hmm.
Um, and that could play into it. And if that's the case, then the Cowboys might walk away with it by 10 or 14. But I've heard some good things about this young quarterback that's coming in for the Eagles. And by my understanding, he's very impressive. He's very talented. He's dual threat. He's very much in line with what the Eagles like in a quarterback, which is why they have Jalen Hurts. Um, and I don't think it's going to change the game much, and it's not going to change the game plan. And at least by what the Eagles fans are saying that I know, they're saying, look, yeah, he's a young quarterback, but we're not worried about it. We have all our faith in him. He's going to come out. He's going to perform. He's going to be lights out. He's going to be good. He's going to be excellent. So I think that'll be interesting to see if the quarterback of the Eagles can keep the Eagles on pace with the offense of the Cowboys.
Yeah, which I think their backup quarterback is Gardner Minshew, who was also on the Jaguars, and that didn't work out. So we'll see how. I mean, yeah, Gardner Minshew is a running quarterback, but we'll see how he does against a team like the Cowboys. And speaking of the Cowboys, I bet you were pretty upset about how they play the Jaguars.
Yeah, I've been working the firework tent, so I didn't have much time to even listen or watch that game. But after the night was kind of winding down, I went in and I looked and I was like, "Are you freaking serious?" They could have lost to the Texans. That would have been bad, but they lost to the Jaguars. Like we knew one of those two games were potentially a trap game. Um, and I don't believe the Cowboys overlooked the Jaguars. By my understanding, there were just a lot of mistakes. Um, Dak Prescott didn't play up to his ability. He actually played more like he did in his rookie season, where he had some inaccurate passes, um, and that's what ended up costing them.
Yeah, and the Cowboys were up by I think 21 to 7 at halftime, and the game looked over for the Jaguars when uh, uh, Trevor Lawrence fumbled the ball late in the game, but their defense stood up and they took it into overtime, which I was kind of shocked. I'm like, really? They're gonna beat the Cowboys? Because I'm watching that game and I'm thinking, yeah, it's 21 to 7, it's over. Jaguars ain't gonna come back from this, and then they do that, and I'm like, wow, just wow. Lawrence went 27 for 42 for 318 yards and 4 touchdowns and 1 interception, compared to Prescott's 23 for 30, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So, and one of those interceptions that Dak Prescott threw was in overtime when it was a pick six in overtime. So that was one of the interceptions that Prescott threw. Um, Travis Etienne led the day for rushing for the Jaguars, 19 carries for 103 yards. Pollard led for the Cowboys, 19 carries for 75 yards. CD Lamb led in receiving for the Cowboys, 7 receptions, 126 yards, and no touchdowns, which is surprising because Jaguars defense is, I mean, the way it's been with the Cowboys has been all right, but you'd think Lamb would get 1 touchdown or two. Um, and yardage wise, it's completely different. Jaguars had 503 yards on the day compared to the Cowboys 397. So at this point, Jaguars are my dark horse in the AFC to get into the playoffs. But as of now, the Jaguars uh, are 10th in the AFC playoff race, so they're not in the picture quite yet. Um, Another comeback game that happened was the Bengals versus the Buccaneers. Tom
Loved
Brady,
it.
what?
Said loved it.
Yeah, um, Brady was up 17-0 on the Bengals, and Tampa Bay. And I'm telling you, the Bengals are hungry. They came back from being 17 down and won the game. Joe Burrow, 27 for 39, 200 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Compared to Brady's, 30 for 44, 312 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And I watched a little bit of that game, but I mostly watched the highlights. And what Tony Romo said in the beginning of the game, he was right. I mean, you can't press coverage the Bengals receivers. You got to play at least 5 or 10 yards off the ball because Chase is going to beat you deep if you let him have that advantage. And speaking of Chase, he led in receiving for the Bengals, 7 receptions, 60 yards and 1 touchdown. Chris Godwin led for the Bucks with 8 receptions, 83 yards and 1 touchdown. So, the Buccaneers are 6-8, Casey, and I don't think Brady's going to win another ring this season, if ever, because Bucks are just having trouble. It's not a complete dumpster fire in Tampa Bay like it is in Denver, but it's
It's
start.
becoming one though.
Yeah, it's becoming one because
I mean, here's a stat for you. When's the last time the Detroit Lions had more wins than Tom Brady after 14 games in a season?
I can't remember, to be honest with you.
They do this year. They're 7-7.
Yeah, they're 7-7, and they're sitting at ninth place in the NFC and they're on a 3-game win streak. So looky
Right.
there, the Lions are not out of the
This is
playoff race.
and and these types of things here keep on making my argument for me on why the NFL needs to reevaluate the way they do the playoffs after this season, because I think everybody is tired of an 11-1, a 12-2, a freaking 10-3, 10-4, whatever it might be team being fifth, sixth, seventh, and then a 7-7 being eighth, ninth, and being out of the playoffs and having a 5-8 or a 6-8 or a 7-9 make the freaking playoffs. Like, how does that, just because of where you play and the competition you play, like it's starting to make less and less sense every week when these standings come out, because your mind goes, okay, in the NFC it should be literally like Philadelphia, Dallas, and the Giants, like three of the top five.
hmm And speaking of the Giants, so if the playoffs ended today in the for the NFC, the Bucks, Giants, and Commanders would make the playoffs. And the Bucks are on a 2-game losing streak. The Giants won one, and the Commanders they lost to the Giants this past Sunday night.
Right.
So yeah, same with the AFC. At the season ended today, the Bengals, Titans, Ravens, Chargers, and Dolphins would make the playoffs. The Bengals look like the better team out of the bunch because they're on a 6-game win streak, and I'm telling you, Casey, that when they lost that Super Bowl, they're hungry. They won it, and they're certainly are acting like it. Because
I'm glad you said that, because I was just sitting here thinking, like, of course the Bengals are hungry. They remember what it felt like to get to the Super Bowl, and they want to get back there, and they want to win it. And I mean, Burrow has done nothing but amaze me since he's been in the NFL. He amazed me, and I watched him every time I got the chance at LSU. Like, the kid has been nothing but amazing since he stepped on the field in college, and he continues to do it with a semi-mediocre team. I mean, he's one of like 3 or 4 stars maybe on that team. They're finally starting to build and put things together, but they're still, I mean, in all honesty, they're a mediocre team, but they find ways to win. And at the end of the day, on a Sunday, that's all that matters.
yeah, yeah. And right now they're at the number 3 seed, which is a lot to say for Cincinnati because there ain't gonna be no more 2-15 seasons. Burrow's there and he's looking to bring them a title, and um,
No, they passed that back to the Browns.
yeah, yeah. The Browns are not even in the playoff picture. They're just spiraling out of control.
They're probably the second dumpster fire in the league.
Yeah, Yeah, with the Baker Mayfield trade and bringing in a guy that hasn't played in over 2 years. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Um, and teams that are eliminated are from playoff contention are the Texans, the Bears, dumpster fire Denver Broncos, the Rams, and Cardinals. We won't get another chance at a repeat Super Bowl win, and we won't get another home team to host the Super Bowl for the third year in a row. So it's going to be uh, like the same old NFL that we know, like two different teams going into a different city at a very neutral site. So um, the 49ers are looking good. They're on a 7-game win streak.
Yeah, they're dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. That game against Seattle, they were up, I think 21-0, and yeah, Seattle came back a little bit, but Brock Purdy led them to a win. So Brock Purdy's the QB of the future for San Francisco,
Oh,
unless
absolutely, I agree.
yeah, and Trey Lance, obviously he's going to be the starter again when he comes back to full health. If Brock Purdy doesn't just go goat mode and just completely takes him out of the race for QB1. But after the game the Vikings had against the Colts, I wouldn't see why not they would be the number 2 seed. Because I mean, yeah, they were down big at halftime, but they were playing at home. They had their fans behind them, and it's going to be a really fun playoff run for them. And my Super Bowl prediction, I think it's going to be the Vikings and Eagles battling it out for the NFC, and it's going to be and for the AFC, I think it's going to be either a shootout between the Bills and Chiefs or the Bengals playing the Bills in the Orchard Park. 'Cause,
Ooh, ooh. So you think either the Bills and Chiefs or the Bengals and the Bills?
yeah,
Hmm. I don't know. Joe Burrow seems to have Patrick Mahomes' number and the number of the Chiefs when it comes down to playing them. Mahomes hasn't been real successful, if my memory serves me right, over the last 2 or 3 seasons against Burrow. Um, so yeah, I could see that. Um, yeah, and I'd agree on the Bills side. There's nobody on that side of the AFC that can compete with the Bills and what the Bills have finally built and put together.
yeah,
Um,
especially especially
and
when
something interesting about the Bills, just to bring it up real quick and tie it into kind of what I do with my other podcast. Um, DeAndre Hopkins, the I think he's a linebacker for or Hawkins, linebacker for the Bills, I believe. Um, he is the division owner of an A7FL division up there in, I want to say, in New Hampshire
huh,
or in New Jersey. In New Jersey, yeah. He actually owns the division in New Jersey. So an NFL player owns an A7FL division that I do the broadcasting for the A7FL Nevada. Um, and that's just one of many. Like there's A7FL player or NFL players that own, like he owns a division or manages the division or whatever it may be out there. Um, but then there are other like ex NFL players that actually play in the A7FL.
oh,
So
like who?
um, one used to was on the Cardinals practice squad, I believe. Um, Trey Robinson.
Huh,
If you look him up, he's played in the NFL. I think he played in the CFL as well. Um, there's also, God, I want to say Daniel Packard is another one. Um, and God, I can't remember. There's like 2 or 3 other guys that we have at least out in Nevada that have played NFL ball at some point, either practice squad or whether they actually played in a game or not. I'm not sure, but they actually have NFL experience at some level. Even some of our coaches have some NFL pedigrees. So
That's pretty cool. Um, going with the rest of the AFC. So the Titans are number one in the AFC North, and they're sitting at the fourth seed. But the Jaguars are kind of on their heels for that AFC South crown because the Titans have lost 4 in a row, and if that keeps going on like that, especially since the Jaguars beat the Cowboys, the Jaguars could very well be the new AFC South champions and could squeeze in to the seventh spot in the playoff race. But they would have to do some work because the Dolphins currently hold the seventh spot with the 8-6 record, but they're on a 3-game losing streak. So I could see the Dolphins making I could see the Jaguars making a run in the playoffs. Like I said, they're my dark horse, but they're going to have to go to a hostile environment to do so because they would have to play the Chiefs as it stands right now if the Chiefs remain the number 2 seed, which playing at Arrowhead in this type of year, especially for the Jaguars. So, but the Broncos, our Denver Broncos got a win this past week against the Arizona Cardinals in Denver. And here's a stat for you, Casey. Over the past 6 times the Broncos played the Cardinals at home, they're 6-0. So they're undefeated against the Cardinals at home for the past couple of times.
I was gonna say, well, man, maybe they should just make their season consist of them playing the Arizona Cardinals, and then they'd be making the playoffs.
Yeah, and Russell Wilson didn't play this game because I think he's in concussion protocol. But Brett Ripon led the Broncos to a win. So, I mean, I was watching the highlights and I'm thinking, did they bench Russell Wilson? But no, he's in a concussion protocol. But
Or he's pulling a Kyler Murray and just wants to sit at home and play video games.
probably so. But Denver's gonna have to do something about probably their coaching staff because Russell Wilson's not playing like Russell Wilson. He's not that Pro Bowl QB that we've seen in the past few seasons. So either give Nathaniel Hackett another year or sit him down, say, hey, this was a terrible year. We're 4-10. Figure it out, or else you're fired. So, yeah, the Ravens in the AFC hold the 5th spot. They're on a 1-game losing streak. The Chargers 6th spot on a 2-game win streak. So back over to the NFC. Sorry, I'm kind of going back and forth here, but the Seahawks are kind of nipping on the heels of the Commanders because the Seahawks are at the 8th spot, so they're outside looking in. They're 7-7, but they're on a 2-game losing streak. So, you know, the QB for Seattle's been really impressing me. I mean, he's been behind Russell Wilson for a couple years now, and he's a pretty decent quarterback. I mean, he's mobile. He can throw the ball pretty good. He sort of led a comeback against the 49ers. So if the Seahawks do squeeze in, as it stands right now, they would have to go to Minnesota to play the Vikings. And yeah, that doesn't look good for Seattle. So, the Vikings are looking to get their first Super Bowl win because they're at the number 2 seed. So, Casey, what do you think your playoff predictions are?
I think in the AFC, it's going to be hard to not go Chiefs versus Bills. But just like you said, that could very easily be Bengals versus Bills. Um, I think the NFC, honestly, Dallas is getting ready to play Philadelphia. I think we'll have a better understanding of what Dallas is actually doing and what they're going to do going into the playoffs
Yeah.
after they play Philadelphia, because that's more or less the level of competition they're going to be up against every weekend once they get into the playoffs. So once they get past this, we have a good competition one weekend, and then we have, a weak team 2 weeks in a row, and then we're back to having top tier competition again. I think once they get into that consistent top tier competition, it's kind of like the commissioner of the A7FL Nevada has been saying. At that point, it's kind of iron sharpens iron. So when you're facing top tier competition, you're going to perform to your top abilities and your top level and the top standards. I believe honestly, if the Dallas Cowboys can beat the Philadelphia Eagles this weekend, I don't see them overtaking Philadelphia for the one spot to go into the playoffs, because I don't see Philadelphia losing out with the remaining schedule they have. Dallas, I can see winning out, but I cannot see Philadelphia losing out. But I believe it'll end up being Philadelphia 1, Dallas 2, and then that NFC championship is going to come down to who ends up winning it again. Is it going to be, I believe Philadelphia and Dallas are going to have to see each other again before the NFC championship.
Hmm.
And I think that winner of that game, if I'm right on how it's set up, that winner of that game, Philadelphia Dallas, will end up being determining who goes into the NFC Championship, and probably the winner of that game will win the NFC Championship if they make it there.
Yeah.
Either one of those two teams could stumble, falter, and lose before the NFC Championship game or before they meet up again. And they could both be out of the playoffs, and we could be talking the fucking Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing the San Francisco 49ers for the NFC Championship.
That is if the Bucks do make the playoffs. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
If the Bucks make the playoffs, but I mean, you're talking that's what we could see as well. But I think it's going to be Dallas or Philadelphia, and then I would say probably the Vikings, because I don't think anybody up there in that division of it has anything for the Vikings. I mean, yeah, the Lions kinda gave them a run, but there's been nobody. I mean, even when the Colts thought they had them on the ropes, they found a way to come back. The only team that's really been able to put a hurting on them and keep the hurting on them has been the Dallas Cowboys when they put the 40-3 hurting on them.
Yeah. And since you brought that up, Dallas could actually very well take the number 2 seed now that you bring it up, because with that 40-3 whooping, um, Dallas could end up taking the number 2 spot, because the NFL could be like, well, in that game against the Vikings, Dallas did pretty well, so let's put them at the number 2, and let's put Minnesota at 3 and bring down San Francisco at 4. So, I mean, I can see a point of how Dallas could take over the number 2 spot. Uh, so, yeah, this NFL season is coming down to crunch time, and and I can't even remember when the last time Brady did not make the playoffs. Maybe it was when he was a couple seasons ago when he was a Patriot.
Maybe.
That was when he lost in the wild card round. But yeah, it's been a while since the GOAT Tom Brady
I
has.
mean, hell, it might have been his first year at the Patriots.
Yeah, probably. And then the following year, he Bledsoe gets injured, and Brady leads the Patriots to a Super Bowl victory. So yeah, it's,
Yeah,
it's going to be very different if Brady's not in the playoffs.
yeah, it will.
Yeah, um, you know that I really do think the Bills could beat the Chiefs out for the AFC Championship game, if that ever happened because the Chiefs don't have Tyreek Hill, and that's what I really think was kind of hurting the Chiefs since then, because they didn't re-sign him, which I thought was stupid, and the Dolphins are 8-6 with Tyreek Hill, so yeah,
That was a good acquisition for the Dolphins.
yeah, yeah, they bring in a good player, but they aren't really that team. So right now, I mean, the teams in Florida, I would have to say it would be Dolphins 1, Jaguars 2, and the Bucks 3, because um, the Bucks are on a downhill curve since they're 6-8. So as for college football, there's not really much going on until next week. That's when bowl games start. Um, the Sooners play Florida State next week, and that game is gonna, it's either going to go good or bad for the Sooners, because they've finished the regular season 6-6. Florida State, of I don't have the record written down right here, but they could very well beat the Sooners, and so uh, yeah,
And my eye for college football for next week is going to be on the Tuesday matchup of the Wisconsin Badgers and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Um, Mike Gundy has basically made a bold move this bowl season. Usually, he will still list the players that are in the transfer portal, talking to other coaches, other teams. He will list them on the depth chart, especially if they are starters. Mike Gundy and the coaching staff have all been in agreement and have removed every single player that has entered the transfer portal from the depth chart for the game against Wisconsin. And oh, by the way, Wisconsin just picked up OU transfer quarterback. So the Virginia quarterback that was looking at Wisconsin and OSU now is really only down to OSU as the possibility of where he will go. And now all odds and all rumors are leaning towards the Virginia quarterback transferring to play his last season at Oklahoma State and be a veteran quarterback in that quarterback room that is going to be full of Zane Flores from Nebraska coming in as a true freshman, redshirt freshman Rangel, and returning freshman, now sophomore Gunnar Gundy.
hmm,
And now you're going to add a QB, most likely from Virginia, who started 4 seasons at Virginia, rushed decently in all 4 seasons, passed decently in all 4 seasons, and his stats are right in line with what Spencer Sanders' stats were as he exits Oklahoma State. Like
yeah,
completion percentage, QB rating, rushing yards, yards per game, passing yards, pass completion, like pass attempts, like everything is almost right in line. If you compare him and Spencer Sanders, they look almost like mirror images of each other.
yeah, yeah. um, with um, with this Cowboys game against Wisconsin and Spencer Sanders in the transfer portal, that's going to take a toll on Oklahoma State. I mean, yeah, yes, it's not a national championship or playoff game, but it's a bowl game. You want to make your school proud, but that's going to hurt Oklahoma State, in my opinion, because now you got your two backup quarterbacks, and you're trying to decide if you're Mike Gundy, you're trying to decide, okay, do I play my son, or and people think that I'm playing favorites, or do I go with the third string and hopefully and see if he does good? If not, then put my son in. So
Honestly, honestly, if I'm Gundy, I don't care that Gunner is my son. I am totally playing Gunner Gundy if I can. Um, for one reason and one reason only, Gunner Gundy seems to have a little bit more accuracy and a little more comfort in the pocket than Garrett Rangel does.
yeah, Yeah. Um, so yeah, that's gonna be pretty interesting, and you know, this is only like a 35-minute show right now, and I didn't have any other college football things going on because bowl season starts next week. But we'll get, but the show will get more exciting as the playoff comes up and everything. So until next time, this he's Casey Cox, the man, the myth, the legend. I'm Collin Zink, and remember, you don't just talk, you pigskin talk. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.